Being 100% yourself is one of the most important things you can aspire to in life. But it's all but easy to really achieve this, right? So in this video, I want to talk about how to be your most authentic self and how to align with who you really are. Now, before getting into how to achieve this, I first want to define what I mean by being yourself, right? When I say be yourself, I mean live in alignment with how you think and feel deep to the core. Align how you act and how you speak with how you think and feel. For me, that's the definition of being yourself. Why does that matter in the first place? Why is it important to be yourself? I think in order to live your best life, in order to be really content and happy in life, you have to be yourself as much as possible. Because otherwise, you will attract the wrong friends, you will attract the wrong partner, maybe you will attract the wrong career ultimately. And to fulfill what's inside you, to fulfill who you really are, you really want to avoid that. Pretending to be someone else can be exhausting, and it can ultimately even make you sick in a way. Also, when you're not yourself, you're wasting your potential, because I really believe that the greatest version of yourself will probably be capable of more than the fake version you try to be, right? And last not but least, it will be incredibly difficult to love yourself if you are essentially pretending to be someone else. Because through that, you're basically signaling to yourself that who you are is not right, not okay. And therefore, you cannot love yourself. Now, in order to be yourself, you first have to find out who you really are. And this is really difficult. I think many people struggle with this. And it's the struggle of our teens many times, but even adults, grown-up adults, struggle with this a whole lot. And I used to struggle with this a whole lot for a long period of time. Even my 20s, my late 20s, I didn't really know who I was. Now, how do you achieve this? How do you achieve being yourself? How do you find out who you are? I mean, this is a very philosophical question in the end. But in my experience, there are two ways to achieve this. And you have to combine them in a way. Number one being just life experience in a way. I mean, you have to experience things. You have to interact with the world in order to understand it and ultimately yourself. Like, you have to taste a strawberry first before you can say if you like it or not, right? And that's true for so many things in life. You have to live to a certain extent. But then introspection is equally as important to understand who you are. Just because it's not enough to get feedback. You have to think through certain things, especially if you feel like you're far away from your true authentic self. And you ultimately have to listen to your gut more. Listen to your intuition more, because that's what you are at the core, right? Another thing that can help with finding out who you are is making a personality test. I found, like the Myers-Briggs one is a great personality test to begin with, because it can help you understanding who you are and why you act and feel and think in certain ways. And it can show you that you are not weird or there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you think differently than other people, for example. And that certainly helped myself, to be honest, a whole lot, because I feel like I am different from other people a whole lot. But understanding my personality type, I am an INFJ, if you care. I won't go too much into this, what that means now, but understanding this about myself helped me figure out myself a whole lot, and understanding why I behave in certain ways, and accepting that, really, about myself. Which is ultimately what you want. If you want to be yourself, you have to accept who you are, and you have to fully accept who you are. Not just the good stuff, obviously, but the bad stuff as well. And again, that's extremely difficult at times. You have to basically stop judging not only yourself, but other people as well. Because what you're judging other people for can many times be one of the things you're actually judging yourself for. I've heard this once. I don't know who said this, but when you're judging someone else, it's probably because they embody a version of yourself you dislike a whole lot, and you despise, and you don't want the world to find out that that's part of you. And I don't know if that's true, but it makes sense in a way, right? You can only accept yourself fully, I think, if you stop judging yourself for this kind of stuff, and stop judging others for who they are. One thing that can help is also understanding that norms, everything that society is basically expecting from yourself, are arbitrary. Just because someone once said that something is cool, or you have to behave in a certain way, doesn't mean that that has to be true for you. But in society, we often tend to just copy what the majority is saying and thinking. And we think we have to act and feel and be in a certain way. And if that's not aligned with how we feel, we kind of feel ashamed of ourselves. We kind of feel like we have to fake feeling or being or acting differently than we feel, just because something seems to be wrong with us, right? Everybody is saying so there must be some truth to it. But that's not the case. It's not an absolute truth, these kind of norms. And shame, I think this is the biggest aspect of accepting yourself. The things you are ashamed of the most, probably these are the ones you have to work on the most. Accepting, not judging this about yourself. Own your weirdness in a way. I think that's a good way to put it. That's something I struggle with a whole lot. Like, there was some aspects of my life people told me were weird in a sense, and I always felt like I had to hide them in many ways. I remember, like, when I was 15 years old, I loved to play a lot of video games. I still love video games, by the way, but back then it was kind of a weird thing to do. Nowadays it's more accepted in society, but back then, when you played video games, it was kind of nerdy, right? And someone actually told me that back then. The person actually said to me, "You're weird. You're playing video games all day, man. You must be a massive nerd," as if that would be something bad, right? But that's how the feedback looked like, right? So own that weirdness, because what's weird will change every other year anyway. That's nothing. There's no weirdness scale somewhere in the world that says, yeah, these people are weird and these people are normal. It's just a question of perspective. Talking about feedback, by the way, understanding why we are not ourselves can help with this. And this might sound a little bit like psychological. I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but this might help. Because when we think about why we pretend to be someone else in the first place, it's very often because we got negative feedback for how we behaved in the past, and for especially like when we were children in school. It's not necessarily about bullying. Bullying can be a part of that, but doing things and saying things and getting negative feedback by your peers that hurts a lot will ultimately, if you're not a very strong character, will ultimately lead to you changing your behavior even though you don't feel like changing that. So you begin to pretend, which then ends up you being not who you really are, right? And as a lack of self-knowledge, by the way, can be part of that. As I said in the beginning, you have to know yourself in order to be yourself. And many people don't even think about that too much, right? They just follow the norms and they just follow what society tells them. Like many people follow the career path of their father or their mother just because they don't know anything else, right? Or they feel like they are expected to by their parents. This used to be a bigger thing in the past. Nowadays, it's less of a thing, but for many people, it still is a thing, right? You become a doctor because your dad is a doctor, something like that. Which not necessarily means that you shouldn't be a doctor, right? If you like to do that, do it. But for some people, it's not the right path, I think. And then, and this is probably the core of this video, a lack of self-love will lead to you not being yourself and pretending to be someone else. Just because you fail, or failure is too harsh of a word for this, but you have problems loving yourself. Accepting yourself, accepting yourself, and ultimately then loving your true self. Yeah. Now, we talked about accepting yourself before, but what can help as well is finding the right tribe of people. Again, I talked about feedback. It will be very difficult to be yourself if you are spending time with people who judge you for who you are. Like, you can be as authentic as you want if your friends and your family and your coworkers will tell you that there's something wrong with you all day. It will be very difficult to maintain that. So finding the right people to surround yourself with can really help to reinforce that. And this will be very difficult. Now, how can you find these people? Well, by being yourself, essentially, and acting in ways and finding groups that are acting the same way. Like if you like playing basketball and you go to a basketball club, you'll find like-minded people. But there are other things like, I don't know, if you want to be an artist, surround yourself with artists. If you want to, I don't know, there's so many things. Think about something. Trying to come up with something else that's weirder. Like, let's go back to the video game topic. If all of your friends hate video games and they're like condescending, talking about it in a condescending way, it might be a good idea to find a friend who actually likes video games as well, right? I'm lucky enough that my best friend actually loves video games as much as I do, maybe even more than that. And we can talk about that a whole lot, which is great. And it's not weird in any case. So be bold. That's what I wanted to add here. Try to polarize. I mean, this is difficult in itself, but polarizing will ultimately help you finding the right people. Because if you're pushing people off with your true, authentic self out of your life, that's a good thing, because you don't need them to be there anyway, right? And then practice. This will take a lot of time and energy, and it's not easy to get there. Being yourself takes practice. You have to learn to say no, for example. That's a big point for people. Say no if you don't want to do something. That's certainly a thing I struggled with in the past. I did things just because I thought people expected me to do so, and I didn't want them to think badly of me just because I didn't do these things. And this will be more difficult the more your character is, or the further your character is away from what society expects you to be. Like if you're an outgoing guy who loves partying and is very talkative and very confident, obviously it's more easy to be yourself than, but just because society likes this character, right? I, for example, am a very introverted, sensitive person, and I've gotten some really bad feedback for that in the past. So being this way will probably be a little bit more difficult, even though I don't want to say that I had it difficult in the past, but certainly it's a thing. So depending on how you feel about yourself and who you are deep at the core, it can be more difficult for you than for others. That's what I want to say, really. So start small with this. Just begin saying no to things you don't want to do. Try to do things that are a little bit weird and try to own them. Even show them to friends, people you trust, and see their reaction. And even if their reaction is negative, try to withstand this, right? Be proud of who you are. And the rest, the rest will follow, in a sense. In the end, it all comes down to loving yourself. And this is a really difficult thing to do, in a sense, because we've never learned to do this in Western society, or it's not taught that much. Loving yourself is probably the ultimate tool to being yourself. Because if you love yourself and you accept yourself fully, you won't have difficulty to displaying that to the world, right? Now, before ending this video, I want to say this. Notice that being yourself is not about adding a skill. It's not about becoming more of something. But it's actually about letting go of what holds you back from being yourself. It's about subtracting these layers from your life that you learned, and unlearning what you learned about being right or okay in this society. You are enough the way you are at the core, and you don't have to add something to that. And obviously, I want to end this video on the note that I understand that there will be times in life where you have to pretend to be someone else. If you are applying to a job, for a job, sometimes you cannot open up about yourself all the way, right? I get that. Sometimes you have to pretend to be someone else to a certain extent. Sometimes you have to present yourself in ways that are not totally true to who you really are. But what I want you to achieve in life is to really feel like the majority of the time you act in alignment with who you are, and you are happy with who you are, and you accept yourself, you love yourself for that. So I think that's a good point to end this video. If you like this, if it helped, I would be glad if you subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in more, maybe you'll come back to it later on. I hope you'll have an amazing day, and I will see you very soon. Bye.